Hey, how's it going, YouTube? We've got some important stuff for us all to discuss today, as it is going to be the final qualifier, not just of Europe, but the entire season this weekend. We've got 8 teams still left in the running for a chance to go to the major, which then provides some crazy chaos when it comes down to who makes the World Championship. First, if you guys enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, turn on notifications. As well, any questions you have down below, leave some comments and hitting up the socials. But the second thing is shoutouts to Direct. Direct is the official statistician for the RLCS. He's the one that puts this together and gives us kind of a quick cheat sheet and makes it nice and easy. And as you can see already at the top, these are the 8 teams that are still in the running despite the chaos that we talked about in the recap. In the recap we put out yesterday, we talked about how a lot of these teams fell to the lower bracket and were battling to make it through. But now once you get into the RLCS, into the top 16, you're reseeded top 16, run it straightforward. So we have our 8 teams that have a chance. The big one to pay attention to, no matter what, K Corp cannot make London. K Corp will not be in London, which is insanity. But that's what happens when you don't qualify, when you have a rough outing and you don't make top 8 and everything else. So that is kind of the way things go. The two teams that are very likely to make it are going to be Vitality and either Gentlemates, Oxygen, BDS. They've got a 3-way tie in that situation. So let's actually focus in on that. Right now, Vitality is sitting at 36 points. They look like the most likely. Behind them, Gentlemates, Oxygen, and BDS after last weekend are at 32 points apiece, all tied. You're basically thinking, if you are outside of those 4, if you are Resolve, Jobless, Luna Galaxy, or Team 3, behind by their respective amount of points, you need to outperform these 3 rosters. So it's essentially these 3 versus these 4 is what we're looking at. So if you are Vitality, pretty straightforward. If they make top 4, they're going to the major. And these, understand, are for clinching. This means we're not talking tiebreakers. We're not talking weird scenarios. This is purely if this thing happens, they go to the major. So for Vitality, top 4, no questions. They have too many points. Nobody can stop them. That would give them an additional 12 points or an additional 8 points, putting their total at 44, which is good to go. Now, realistically, if they end up making top 8, which many of us would like to assume they would, although they qualified through lower bracket in a very close situation, all they need one of these things to happen. Resolve can't win, which is likely. BDS, Oxygen, or Gentlemates needs to finish at best top 8. So if all 3 of these teams end up making the top 4 and Vitality does not, that's when things get interesting. So I don't know who's going to be the one to beat Vitality in the quarterfinals. I don't expect many are capable of doing so, but realistically, that is what we're looking. Okay? As long as they make top 8, there's a very, very good chance that they make it in. If they don't make top 8, then they still, same scenarios, because they have such a point buffer and such a point discrepancy between the teams below them that extra 2 points is enough to keep them ahead. So they're fine. You know, KC, yeah, Light Fury, that's a good example. KC could play massive upset and make the grand finals and knock out Vitality. But even still, everything has to go worst case scenario for them. Like, Resolve has to be the one to win the whole thing over like KC and have Resolve, KC, BDS, Oxygen in the semis or Gentlemates. You know, like it's crazy. So very unlikely, but Vitality is basically locked in. Now, the next scenario is for 3 teams, Gentlemates, Oxygen, and BDS. All are the exact same. Just anytime you see one of those names, you can replace it with the other teams involved. So like we're looking at Gentlemates. Wherever you see Oxygen and BDS, you can swap. So this would be instead, this would be Oxygen, this would be Gentlemates and BDS. If this would be so on and so forth. All same, all identical. Realistically, with these teams, getting to the grand finals is chef's kiss. They're in. Nobody has to question it. Top 4 at least gives them a tiebreaker. So that is essentially what Gentlemates, Oxygen, and BDS are all striving for, which is to make the top 4. If, and only if, some weirdness happens, I guess is the best way to explain it. But if they make top 4, right, and one or more of the following happen, they clinch. But at least they have some backup. there's two different distinctions here that Direct puts, and they make sense. But if they clinch the major, if they finish third or fourth, and either Vitality doesn't make top 8, Oxygen only finishes top 8 if BDS only finishes top 8, or Resolve does not win. So the realistic part of this whole scenario and this whole situation is if you are Vitality, if you are Gentlemates, if you are Oxygen, if you are BDS, get top 8 or top 4, and then you just got to hope Resolve doesn't win, which no ill will towards Resolve. I do not think they are capable of winning the entire event and beating a BDS, KC, Vitality, what have you. Although they did beat BDS two times ago in qualifier 4. So you never know. You never know. Pressure and stuff on the line. We watched some really ugly Rocket League this past weekend. Some amazing, some great, but other ones were pretty sloppy. And because of that, you never know what can happen with pressure on the line. We just saw a bunch of teams in Europe through qualifiers, all qualify through the lower bracket. So I digress. Realistically, though, is if Mates, Oxygen, or BDS make top 8, which they should, they need 2 or more of the following things to happen. Jobless not to win the thing, which is likely, and they need Resolve to finish top 8. Or if they make top 4 and no further. So you can't have Resolve make top 2, and Jobless cannot win. So that's what these 3 teams are looking for. All 3 of these teams, Mates, Oxygen, and BDS, are rooting for Jobless to poop the bed and making a top 5, top 8. So quarterfinals. Resolve has a one placement gap. They have an additional 4 points. So it's as if Resolve has placed top 4 and Jobless has placed only top 8. But if Resolve make and win the entire event, they guarantee themselves a tiebreaker. They at least have a chance. Think similarly to Shopify the previous week, where Shopify ended up making the grand finals. Top 2, they at least get a chance to play in the best of 7 against OG. But Resolve has to win it all. If they do win, and one of the following happens, where one of these teams ends up going out in quarterfinals, which would be plausible, right? If Resolve is in quarterfinals, one of these teams is also likely going to be in quarterfinals between Mates, Oxygen, and BDS. Say they go head-to-head. Say the quarterfinal scenario is Resolve is playing BDS, we get a rematch of qualifier 4. And Resolve wins again, and they then go on to win the entire thing. BDS is out and Resolve is in. So there is chances. What I think is more likely is if they place a top 4. If they do not make above top 8, they're done. They're eliminated from the tournament. They're eliminated from the season. But if they make top 4, they need 4 more of the following things to happen, which, gonna put it out there, chat. I could see Team 3 not winning. I could see Luna Galaxy not winning. I could see Jobless not winning. But BDS, Oxygen, or Gentlemates all going 0-3, I don't think is going to happen. I would expect BDS, Oxygen, Gentlemates to get at least 1 game win each. So I don't think this is going to be good enough. I would assume they have to at least get to the grand finals. So if you're a Resolve fan, you're hoping for the grand finals. If you're for Jobless, Jobless has to make the grand finals. Anything worse is elimination for the season. It's chalked up, but they have to go to the finals and they need a ton of help. And the help they need is very unlikely. They can get 2 out of 4, I think, pretty convincingly. But the rest is, I mean, you are hoping for one, like for Jobless to make it. Mates, Oxygen, BDS has to go 3, which I just don't see happening. I really don't. Obviously, pressure and stuff happens, but I can't think of a world where it would. And then if they win the whole thing, obviously it's only 2 or more, and it becomes a little bit more likely, but still very difficult. For Luna Galaxy, the former Magnifico team that was at one point 1 series away from making Major 1, who has now been facing a lot of issues now that Stizzy is gone, and they brought in a Chronic, they just haven't had the same results. They have to make the grand finals and win to stand a chance. If they get top 2 and they make the grand finals and lose, they're done. So they have to win the whole thing. No pressure, guys. And they need 2 or more of the following to happen. Resolve top 4, which I could see possible. And then they need one of the teams between Mates, Oxygen, and BDS to only get 1 win. So winning the whole thing is their catalyst. It's a little bit more difficult, but the qualifications for it to happen is they just need that extra 4 points, the 20 points over 16, to beat out one of those teams. And last but not least, we got Team 3. Team 3, same situation to Galaxy. They are identical. Okay. So in order for Team 3 to make it, they have to do the same thing. Both at 18 points. They got to make the grand finals. And they need one of those teams to perform only 1 and 3. And they need resolve top 4 at best. So it is tough. Essentially, chat, I think for everybody watching on YouTube as well, realistically, these are your 4 going to the major. It is what we assume pretty locked in. Even if they have an off performance, statistically, they need some pretty wild things to happen. The only ones that really have a fighting chance are Resolve and Jobless. Resolve and Jobless have some odds that it could make happen, but realistically, if you're a betting person, if you're even betting the low odds, it's just statistically, it would be an anomaly. So again, Vitality and the rest, we're looking at the same going. The difference, though, is Oxygen, as they are hitting their hot streak when it matters most, is going to be replacing K-Corp. That's what we look like. They do seem like the 4 best teams currently, but who knows with K-Corp? Maybe now that they know they can't make it, nothing to lose, they play loose and things go well. But with that in mind, the World Championship, there's a lot on the line, and that's what I'm going to be paying attention to this weekend, is when these matches are going down. Obviously, we can have our assumption of what's happening with the teams that are probably going to make it, but the long-term effect of what is going to happen for the results and the points matters when it comes to the World Championship. So I'm going to pull up the rankings and kind of give you guys an indication of what that's going to look like, and I appreciate you guys sticking around for this length of the video. But if you look at Europe, okay, KC right now has 79 points. Because they have 79 points, they do have a bit of a buffer over Oxygen. And Oxygen is trying to play catch-up to both BDS and K-Corp. But the reason why we're focused in on K-Corp is because K-Corp can't get any additional points at the major. So this regional, when I say there's like no pressure because they can't go to the major, is actually more important because it's about the World Championship. K-Corp needs to consume as many points as possible this weekend in hopes of creating a buffer and neutralizing the gap between Oxygen and themselves. So if we assume what's going to happen, I personally believe that Oxygen's going to perform well this weekend. They're probably going to make a top 4 or something to that nature because of how they've looked, which means that they're going to get the 4 points that they already have that are calculated into this, plus an additional 8, which would put them at 60 total. So the difficulty is with that 60 total, you get essentially a point plus 0.25 when you go to the major. So instead of being 4 points for last place, you get 5. And I think Oxygen is of capability to be a top 8 team at the major. And at the major, point-wise for top 8 is 16 points. So you're talking, based upon where they're at, they get an additional 8 minimum for this weekend, which would put them at roughly 60, plus the additional 16. They're now at 76 points and just outside of K-Corp. So K-Corp, the ability for them to really perform and get some additional points to create a bigger gap will still allow K-Corp to go to the World Championship, while Oxygen is going to miss short. So these teams kind of in this conversation really need to perform to create that buffer, because if Oxygen pops off, has a really good performance, top to 16 points, which is an additional 12, that puts them at 60, 66. And then from there, it's like, okay, how well do you perform at the major too? Like, it's a pretty big deal. Like Prof is saying in chat, this regional qualifier 6 is K-Corp's major. If K-Corp does not perform well this weekend, they could lose their spot. Same thing to BDS. The difference is BDS is likely to be able to earn an extra couple points to keep themselves above and their head out of water. There's some pretty crazy pressure on the line. There's a lot of things that are playing into account. I will do my best to keep you guys up to date on what's going on during this weekend. Unfortunately, there will not be a watch party. I am going to Philadelphia for a wedding, so I will not be able to do that. But crazy things, I'll do my best to stay up to date, tweet when I can, all that kind of stuff. If you want to make sure you don't miss out on that, follow the link down below, twitch.tv/Lawler when we are streaming, or check out my Twitter. Links all in the description. My Discord is popping. Everybody's usually talking during the events, so they should be able to keep you up to date. But documents, everything you need in the link below, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.